This is Groundeffected. My name is your dad, and on my painting desk today is Jafar from Toon Studios. Now, as time is pretty tight for me this week, I've already primed this model with black primer, and I've hung it precariously so it has done all the things that is necessary for painting a model. Necessary by my means, but before we paint this model, let me quickly tell you about the sponsor of this video. This week's video was sponsored by Toon Studios. This is a Patreon over on Patreon where they create 3D files for you to 3D print on your 3D printer. If you subscribe in their second tier, which is called the Ultimate Animator, you will get 2 highly detailed sculpts, 40% off of their Gumroad models, but I'll tell you something very important, is that you get pre-supported files and also permission to sell 3D prints. Now I know that a lot of people like to sell their 3D prints and even perhaps sell their painted models. This would be the most fantastic tier to be in if you are thinking of that. Also, thank you Toons for sponsoring this video. Lately I've been using Kaleido primer, which seems to be working out pretty well for me in the long run. At least so far anyway. Now I'm going to be using this paint which absolutely sucks, this extreme metal gold. You cannot paint it with a paintbrush, and it is very fearful thing to put inside of your airbrush because of it might not wash out, to be honest, and I did wash it out using alcohol, by the way. So if you use it, do not put water in your airbrush because you will gum the whole thing up and you will have a sad time. Let's just quickly move on to how I painted the reds on this model. I painted a zenithal highlight over black, which is white over black. I don't know why I said it that way around, but I said it, and I said what I said, and I stand by it. Anyway, I'm then going to put a red over the top of that. But in order to reinforce the shadows, I'm going to spray whatever color that is. It's Carabao Crimson. That's what it is. I sprayed that into the shadows. And speaking of shadows, the golden sections of his feet needed some shadows too, and for this I just used Skeleton Horde. Also, I forgot to paint that little feather on the top of his whatever that round thing on his head. I don't know what it is. It's a turban. Words are hard today. Shit. Honestly, it feels like some days I'm literally chewing on the words that I'm trying to say. However, without worrying about my speech impediments, we can move on to the thing that I really hate doing, which is masking. And to be honest, this was an absolute necessary evil for this specific thing, because this paint cannot go through a paintbrush. It is terrible through paintbrush. Also, I'm still not sure why I chose to use this paint. However, I stuck with it, and since I've stuck with it, Mama raised no quitter, so I'm gonna just go with it. That's just what I'm doing. I'm also gonna need to lighten that, by the way, because that wasn't actually the correct color. So I used this very lighter gold from Monument Hobbies, and I sprayed that over his necklace area. I don't know why I thought that that was gonna help. It did not help, and also I made a very serious lapse of judgment in my life, which was basically forgetting that the whole inside of his arms was supposed to be red. So just threw some white and then red over it. Basically, I don't care for overspray. That should be a t-shirt that I wear with pride. Now it's time to actually start painting the rest of the parts of these pieces. All the difficult bits are technically done at this point, and now all I have to do is color in between the lines, as they say. It's like doing a coloring in book, and 5-year-olds do that. So really, a 5-year-old could do this. Probably not. Maybe they could, but just don't feel bad if you can't do it yourself. It's not that hard. It just takes a little bit of time and a little bit of patience. Basically, just very carefully trying to color in between the lines. I find it hard to add too much information into videos, but I feel like this is a very important piece that I should add during this time, and that is that you don't have to overdo everything. Not everything needs a shadow and a highlight. That's just a rule. that I have made up. In fact, I have not made that up. It's probably a rule that someone much cleverer than me has made up somewhere in the past. However, I abide by this rule, even though I absolutely hate rules, and I like to go the exact opposite way of the rule telling me to go. Anyway, not worrying about that kind of stuff. Basically, don't paint everything. Except for paint everything, but don't put too much effort into everything. Like, this whole entire skirt is just solid black. The only thing I'm going to do is spray a little bit of purple around the rims of the edges, and that's it. Genuinely, I'm not putting even any highlights. Later on, I may spray a bit of a contrast paint over the top of it, but realistically, you don't have to go overboard. If you put effort into certain things, that effort will show and stand out more importantly than just the black area of something. So, hopefully this makes any sense. Here is the part where I put a highlight, but as you can clearly see, this makes absolutely no difference to the black that is there. So that was just a waste of some contrast paints, which is probably not a good idea since they cost so bloody much. For the skin tones, by the way, I chose to go with a very simple 3-color method. This is using a skin tone as a base color and then putting orcish dermis into the shadows of that, and then just putting a lighter skin tone over the top of it. That's it. It's literally 3 colors, but it shows. Because this is a cartoon character, he doesn't need to have as much depth to his skin, so I don't need to go overboard. But I just want to show you that this is just 3 colors, and with 3 colors you can have a believable looking skin tone for free. To be fair though, I did actually spray a little bit of shadows in, and for the shadows, I used Gilliman Flesh. So it's just a quick 3 to 4 color system, really, at the end of the day. Now, quickly moving on, I need to paint the staff, which is in between his hands, and this is an annoying thing. Very annoying, because you have to try to fit a brush in between very tiny fixtures between fingers and not get paint on the lovely skin tones you've done. However, as soon as I've painted that middle section, I'm going to take this AK Gold and spray this through my airbrush very carefully, aiming my airbrush away from the skin tones. This way the overspray won't go over the skin, but at the same time I'm kind of blending it into that bronze that I had painted over near the hand. And because the hand is there, it's kind of okay. It's a bit of shadow from the hand. It's not perfect. Genuinely, it's not perfect, but you can judge by the overall appearance of my model at the end whether these tiny imperfections that I've constantly created everywhere are actually ruining the model or not, and that will be your own judgment, and I do not care. There is a little box at the bottom of this video for you to leave your judgments, conclusions, and if you leave them down there, while you're down there, you might as well click like and subscribe on this channel, because obviously if you subscribe, I'll have one more new subscriber, and that is just how maths works. I would have showed you the color that I used for painting this gem in the inside of his hat, but unfortunately it's from Ammo by Mig, and they like to make labels that don't show you names after about 2 uses, so it was absolutely pointless showing you. It was just metallic red, basically. I used a red ink instead of Bile red contrast paint for Iago because I wanted the color of him to be slightly different to the reds on the robes. This way it doesn't look like Iago is made up of the robes of obviously Jafar. Now, I just want to mention something about Iago. After painting this guy, I have a little piece of thing that is drying with a bit of gold on it standing next to my table. And what you may have noticed is that I have not yet painted a base. This means I have nowhere to put my model, so as I am doing this model painting, I am slowly but surely building this model together and leaning it up against something in my studio. Which meant that at a certain point when I had finished painting Iago, he fell off of the shoulder of Jafar and ended up getting very damaged. So when you look at the final renders, I would please ask you to avoid your eye from seeing any of the damage that might possibly be visible on Iago. Now let's quickly move on to explain how I painted the rest of the bits on him. Blue is really easy to go over red, most blues in any case. What does not go over red though is yellow, and no matter what yellow you use, it does not go over red. This is why I had to put a layer of deck tan before I did any of the yellows. However, deck tan is a darkened white, so thus forth it will not be the brightest of yellows. This is how I created the yellows that I used on the beak, and I also sprayed Iandan yellow into the shadows of that, obviously to give it a bit of shadow. Now I do want to mention that if you had to go over a white, this would be a slightly brighter yellow, but if you had to go over a grey, an even darker yellow. It's subjective to what you are looking for, the color out of the piece that you're trying to paint. You could also go over pink as well, and this would give you a slightly more orangey yellow. Again, underpaintings are very important. Those who like to suggest that they aren't need to be running off of the long end of a short pier. Anyway, let's get back into painting again, because we keep diverging in this video. Unfortunately, my brain cannot concentrate on one task at a time, apparently. This is pretty straightforward, though. I mean, do I really need to explain? Basically, I'm painting black over all the black parts on the model. Pretty much all the hairs. Again, it's a cartoon, so I don't have to be painting individual hairs on this stuff. I can literally paint it solid, making sure to go over the outside of the ridges and putting it on as neatly as I possibly can. For a lot of this, though, I do wear a pair of spectacles, which I bought from the cheap shop. You know, those dollar stores and pound stores, those kind of shops? It is literally a 4 times optical zoom. There is no magic in the glasses. They are just a magnifying glass attached to frames and then hung around my ears and nose. This is to make me be able to see better. However, it does mean that I have to put the model right up to my face, and it makes me feel older than I actually am. Aside from all that, though, it was a pretty straightforward face to paint, and I used obviously the usual suspects for painting the pupils and a white specular highlight. When I came to the base now, this felt really weird for me, because this was the reverse of what I normally do. Normally I would paint the base first and then paint the model, but in this case it happened like this. I don't know why it did, but we do not fight with Mother Nature, we just go with it. And in order to go with it, it meant I needed to take a load of greys and just dry brush them over this base. Now the base is a rocky material, which is kind of weird because I honestly thought it would be a sandy material. When I originally thought of this model, I didn't even look at what the base looked like. I just saw the main render of the face of him, and I figured that the base would probably be sand until I looked at the renders and realized it's rock. But this makes it so much easier because rock is so easy to paint, and in fact this is a bluey kind of rock, so it's even easier. Just a succession of grays, and then using a wash like, for example, this Drakenhof Nightshade, I can spray that into the crevasses, thus making it look a little bit more bluer than it actually is. And I can then come back with some deck tan and just catch some of the edges that are nicely sculpted into the detail of the base, which then makes it look just like a rock. After the rock is sufficiently rockified, it is now time to paint all of that gold on the base. And truly do wish that I had a pile of gold like this myself, specifically the size of these coins versus the size of Jafar. Just one of these would set me for life. Genuinely, just want one of these. Please, universe, send me a gold coin the size of the one I've painted for Jafar from Aladdin. But it's pretty straightforward, really. I used that bronze. I'll thin this down with water, by the way, on my wet palette. Yes, I put metallic paint on my wet palette, and this makes it easier to work with. Obviously, otherwise I wouldn't put it on my wet palette. And once I've finished painting those, I can now actually put the model on top of the model and call this one done. Now hopefully you enjoyed this video, because if you didn't, well then I don't understand why you're here listening to these words at the end of the video, because most of you just click off if you don't enjoy it. That's just how things work. And speaking of how things work, that means that looking at my analytics, most of you are not subscribed either. So if you want to subscribe, then usually that little button will light up when I say that word, and you should probably subscribe. But also, if you're doing that, you might as well click like and share this video, perhaps with your gran. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who watches my videos, but very importantly, a huge thank you to my Patreons who keep the lights on and blinding my eyeballs, enabling me to paint every single week. By the way, over on my Patreon, you will get a palette, which means that I will put all of the paints from the model that I painted in the video into a very easy system for you to literally print out and tick off to check that you have, or go and buy the ones that you need. I also want to say a massive thank you to Toon Studios for sponsoring this video, and this is obviously the part of the video where I get to tell you that if there's anything you saw in this video that you did not like, I do not care, and you should probably